Hello everyone, this is Nitpicking Nerd, and this is my review of episode 8 of season 3 of the Orville called Midnight Blue. And I would say this was an average episode. It had a lot of really good moments and good scenes, but also a lot of unnecessary filler. The episode felt too long. I think if they would have edited it down and improved the pacing, it could have been much better. And there was one specific scene which kind of broke the fourth wall a little bit too much and took me out of it, and it was unnecessary for the plot. So it was like a cameo for the sake of it. So I didn't really like that. So I think if they would have edited this episode down to 50 minutes, then the pacing would be much better and wouldn't feel as boring in places. However, there were still a lot of great scenes, and visually this episode was really good. A lot of beautiful shots, both in space and on the planet, which they try to show as an idyllic society and all of that. That colony of the Moclan females really reminds me of Star Trek Insurrection, which had that secret colony inside the nebula, and the chase scene in a canyon, which kind of reminded me of that scene in Independence Day when Will Smith was the pilot fighting aliens and stuff like that. So visually it was really good, and also we had the scenes of the Union Senate meetings and stuff like that, which is kind of similar to that scene in Star Trek 4 when the Klingon ambassador is speaking there and kind of threatening them that there will be no peace as long as Kirk lives and stuff like that. And there's a lot of similar stuff in this episode as well with the Moclan ambassador in this episode, and it's always fun to see all the different kinds of aliens which we've seen across the show, and they're now all in this meeting hall discussing the political stuff, and as always the personal stories of the characters we know tie with the bigger events of galactic importance. So it makes it all feel both epic and huge, and also personal stories and drama and emotions at the same time. And the plot is that they basically go to that planet of the Moclan females, and they take Topa with them because she really wants to go and meet her idol, her hero, that woman who spoke on her behalf when she was a baby. And she gets to meet her, and we see that colony, and everything is beautiful on the planet, very nice and idyllic, and it was obvious something bad is going to happen because we can't just have a full episode of just nice things without anything dangerous going on. And the Moclan males send their own team to investigate the planet. And it is kind of silly how they took Topa to the planet, even though they previously said that the whole agreement with the Moclans is that they will stop smuggling Moclan females to the planet, and yet they take a Moclan female to the planet. So it kind of felt stupid to me that they kind of openly provoke the Moclans right from the start, and then don't even bother to keep an eye on Topa and to guard her to make sure nothing will happen. I think it felt a little bit stupid. It made some of the characters seem stupid, so that's a minus for the episode. But the scenes on the planet itself were pretty nice. And then the female leader basically recruits Topa to help them in their smuggling efforts, because secretly they're still smuggling females to the planet, which also doesn't make sense, because wouldn't it be easily detectable that they did it simply by scanning the number of females on this planet? I mean, since they cannot reproduce, if they're all females, that means their number should remain constant, and yet their number seems to be growing. So wouldn't that alone prove that they are smuggling more females to the planet? So how come no one ever mentioned that problem? How did they think they're going to get away with it if they keep increasing their population, if they're under such scrutiny that the Moclans keep watching them and all of that? And then the female leader basically recruits Topa to help them in their smuggling efforts, even though she's like 2 years old at this point. So isn't that kind of stupid as well? I could buy that the Moclan grow up quicker and all of that, so she may be much more mature, but still a 2-year-old life experience is not enough to trust someone and put such a burden on her and all of that. So that was also stupid. Also early on there was a kind of a funny scene of Topa saying she's attracted to one of the males on the ship, and then it turns out that it's Gordon. So that was kind of funny because it was surprising, but it has the potential of becoming creepy. I'm glad they didn't go there. That would have given me Voyager flashbacks of Neelix and Cass dating, even though Cass was only 2 years old and Neelix was her lover, which was extremely creepy in Voyager. So I'm glad they didn't do something like that on the Orville, because Topa is basically still a baby by human standards, and so that would definitely be nasty. And the Moclan female leader is kind of nasty in the fact that she recruits such a small child to serve as her secret liaison to the other Moclan females on the Moclus planet. And all of this makes this character much more morally grey because she's not afraid to risk the life of a child to endanger her for the sake of her political crusade to free all the females and all of that. And it would have been different if we knew that the females are being killed on Moclus, that they're being executed, that there's a genocide. They simply turn them into males, they're not killing them. And it is a procedure which can be reversed later on, as we've seen. And so it's not such a crucial mission to save them to be worth it to risk the life of a child if we're not talking about preventing genocide. If it was actual genocide going on, that all the females were being executed, then I would say that morally I will be on the side of this woman who wants to risk one life to save millions of lives. That is understandable, but in this case it's not about saving lives, it's only about saving their gender basically. So I would say that all of this makes this character much less of a saint or more kind of a grey and complicated character, which is interesting in a way. I do like it because it creates all this debate, it creates the complexity and the conflicts between the characters and all of that. So overall it is a good thing they did that. It makes it much more interesting, much less black and white. It's a good thing they made things much more complicated and layered and all of that, but it is a complaint I have against the characters and their decisions. So putting such pressure on a young child who is 2 years old is not just kind of immoral but also stupid, because how can you not predict that your secrets might leak out and all of that? Why would you trust your biggest secrets to a child? So that makes the character seem kind of stupid. And then of course Toppa gets kidnapped by those Moclan men and taken to some secret base on some other planet. And they also sabotaged Kelly's shuttle, and so they cannot contact the Orville, so they have to take a shuttle to chase after the Moclans by themselves and try to rescue Toppa. And Toppa is taken into an interrogation room and is tortured by kind of a Gol Madred kind of character. Also reminds me of that Cardassian in Deep Space Nine who had half his face burned because of what Kira did during the occupation, and so he wanted revenge against Kira, he wanted to torture her. And Toppa is basically being tortured by this evil Moclan with one eye who is beating her up and uses pain sticks on her. I kind of wish they would have done something like the Four Lights thing. That would have been an interesting callback, but they kind of made it all too simplistic. I wish they would have added some new ideas, some new... It's not that I want to see some gore and some torture, which is creative, but it just would have made it more interesting if they had some kind of new method of doing that and not just the typical, oh, tie you to a chair and beat you up and use the pain stick to electrify you. That was kind of too simplistic. So I do wish they would have invented some new way to try to torture someone. Not necessarily in a graphic, physical way, maybe in a more psychological way. I would have appreciated it if they invented something new which we haven't seen before a million times. And there was a scene between Bortus and Kelly when he tells her how much he appreciates her presence in Toppa's life and how much she means to her and how important their connection is, something like that. And it really reminded me of a scene between Worf and Troy when Worf thanked Troy for helping him with Alexander and stuff like that. So I think that was in the beginning of the relationship between Worf and Troy, that it all started because she was helping him out with his child. And so there was something very similar to that here, and there was even a moment in which you think they're about to kiss before they were interrupted. So I thought that was very similar to that small storyline in TNG, which didn't really go anywhere later on. And then they sneak into this secret base kind of easily, and then they rescue Toppa right after she revealed all her secrets to the torturer. And then they're about to leave, and she never tells Bortus, hey, can you kill that guy, because I just told him all the biggest secrets and he just tortured me for a few hours, can you maybe kill him? But she never says that. They're about to leave, and then Bortus just gets angry and just decides to beat him up for revenge, and then he uses the same pain stick to take out his other eye, but he seems to still be alive, even though they mentioned earlier that the pain sticks can erase someone's memory. So maybe by doing that, that guy won't remember the name that Toppa gave him. I don't know if this will ever be followed up, so I thought it was kind of sloppy. It was never explained, so will that guy remember the name? Is the name even important after all of this? None of that is ever mentioned again, so it felt a little bit of a sloppy writing, unless it's been addressed in a later episode. I would say it was once again just unnecessary fillers. It didn't really affect or change anything, so I thought that was kind of a cop-out. Maybe Borto should have killed that guy after Toppa told him that she told him all the secrets, and then he would have killed him, or at least made sure that he will not remember anything with that paint stick. So he did take out his eyes, so that was something, I guess. Maybe that guy can later come back with some visor-type device like LaForge to enable him to see in future episodes. Even though, wouldn't they be simply able to grow new eyes, since I think in the Orville they are able to regrow limbs. I think Gordon once had his leg cut off and they easily grew him a new one, so wouldn't they be able to fix his eye if Moclus was part of the Union, and presumably they all shared each other's technologies, so wouldn't that guy simply able to regrow his eye? I guess the fact that he never regrew his other eye means that they cannot do that, so I guess he'll have a visor in his next appearance if he'll ever appear again, which I do wish they'll do. I do want to see reoccurring villains, like in Deep Space Nine when we had a lot of interesting villains which always showed up again and again, and that allowed them to be more properly developed. So maybe that guy will show up later with a visor. And then we have the chase scene with the shuttles being chased by the Moclan fighters, and they're flying through a cliff. It kind of reminded me of that scene in Independence Day, and also how Bortos was able to disable the other ships because he know all their weaknesses. That kind of reminded me of a scene from Deep Space Nine, I think season 7, when Wei-Yun was helping Odo against other Jem'Hadar ships, and knew where to shoot them at exactly and all of that, so that was also a little bit similar. And visually it was all great. Also kind of reminded me of the pod race in Star Wars Episode 1. And meanwhile we have all the political scenes on Earth when the Moclan ambassadors are complaining about the treaty violation by the females on that planet. And technically they are correct, and so the Union seems to be on their side up until suddenly the door opens, and then the wounded Toppa walks in as a witness that these Moclans basically kidnapped her and tortured her in secret, and that turns the tide against them. And that scene was also ironic because it was so similar to that scene in season 1 during the trial to decide her fate as a baby, and then that other female walked in to testify, and this was similar only in reverse. This time it's Toppa walking in to speak out against the Moclan males and all of that, so I did love the irony of it. And also just emotionally and just morally, it was kind of a satisfying moment to see the entire Union watching and seeing the victim of what the Moclans did directly, and then she testifies of how they tortured her and all of that. So I thought that was a very good scene, both emotionally and just morally and politically interesting, and all of that together worked really well. And I loved how it completely shut up the Moclan ambassadors who were being nasty and demanding all kinds of things, and then the entire Union turned against them. And it ended with the Moclans basically being kicked out of the Union, which is interesting because it kind of complicates things, with the bigger Kalon threat and all of that. So that makes the show as a whole much more complicated and interesting with all these different factions. And then in the very end of the episode, when Toppa is being treated on the ship, we see Klyden coming back and basically beg for forgiveness, because I guess he was watching the news and he saw Toppa. So he comes back to the Orville and basically begs for forgiveness, and apparently he changed all of his viewpoints. Suddenly he's against the Moclan bigotry and all of that, which seems a little bit too rushed, but I guess the love he has for his child is stronger than all of that, and so that did force him to finally change his views and to accept her and all of that. So it does feel a little bit too rushed, it does feel too simplistic. Maybe they will deal with that later on. I am happy that he's back in the show because I did kind of enjoy his character, especially earlier on when he was a very comedic character. And even dramatically wise, he was a good character, and that scene of him reuniting with Toppa is pretty emotional. It does work for me. And so overall I would say this was a decent episode, even though somewhere in the middle it was kind of losing me because the pacing was kind of slow and too much unnecessary filler scenes. But the ending made it worthwhile, both the political showdown and also the emotional personal story of Klyden coming back. So overall I would say this was a slightly above average episode. I would say it's 6 out of 10 in my opinion. So that's all I really had to say about it. Let me know what you think and we can discuss all of this in the comments below. And I will see you all next time. Bye bye.